You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission to order. The agenda for tonight's meeting is posted on the website. The date of that agenda is 10/13/2021. That's what we'll be using tonight to go through the material. Material for the meeting is in the Dropbox on the town's website. And let's see, we have a quorum. All members of the commission that are present are seated and therefore can participate. Each commissioner on decisions gets one vote. Let's see, I would like, as Jamie indicated at the beginning, that those that aren't speaking mute their audio so that we don't get any feedback. When it comes time for comment, please.
Recording in progress.
Did I lose you?
We're still here, although we can't see you.
Right. I all of a sudden Zoom said unable to join meeting. Hang on. Let's see. I'm going to do at this point a roll call. Starting out, I guess, Clarice, why don't you start?
Commissioner Begemon, present.
Commissioner Grenolch, present.
I'm Karen Falco. I'm a board member of Island View Village 2.
Yeah, this is just commissioners that need to do the roll call.
Commissioner Kraus, present.
Commissioner Basserman, present.
Commissioner Papantonis, present.
Okay. First item of business is the approval of the minutes for September 8th, the site walk minutes, part of the package.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Grenolch, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the site walk on September 8th.
Commissioner Boda, second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So Peter, this is Commissioner Kraus. I only went to half the site walk, so can I vote or not vote?
You can vote.
Okay, then I vote aye.
Okay. Moving on, I think we have the meeting minutes. It's listed here as September 14th. It is actually September 9th. How should we handle that, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think just stating that correction is probably sufficient.
Great. I'd like to indicate that the meeting minutes that are being approved this evening are those from September 9th, 2021, not September 14th. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Grenolch, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of September 9th, 2021.
Commissioner Boda, second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We have tonight an application for receipt Inland Wetland 21-1001, 18 Brook Hills Road, residential septic system replacement.
Good evening, everyone.
Is there a background on this, Jamie, that we need to hear before the applicant?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. The application is for receipt, so it's not actionable by the commission. However, I think the level of activity may be appropriate for agent approval. I would probably want to visit the site first just to confirm I fully understand the extent of the activity and clarify a couple of points. But with that being said, I can hand it over to the applicant for a brief presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering at 420 East Main Street, Brantford, representing the applicant. 18 Brook Hills Road is approximately 1.3 acres on the south side of Brook Hills Road. I'll put it up on the screen. It's an existing home with an existing driveway. There's a drainage easement that runs down the side and into the pond. I believe is town. The septic system needs to be replaced, which is what you can see here in dark lines. Silt fence line. The existing septic system is in roughly the same area. This is really the only area for the system on the lot. It has been reviewed and approved by East Shore at this point. We are showing a stockpile area, although when I spoke to Jamie about this a little bit, we would probably shift this up a little bit and put a small tracking pad here off the end of the driveway, because this is more than likely how the contractor would get into the yard. But yeah, that's it. This, because of the restrictive layers here, we have to raise the system up from natural grade. So there is some filling going on here, which is why this looks much larger than just a single line of leaching area. And that's it. I will say that this is pretty manicured property, and it has been historically lawn right down to the edge of the pond.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Kind of on that note, there is not a wetland delineation for the subject property. However, we have had an application on the other side of this pond, and the wetland limit is pretty close to the edge of the standing water of the pond, if you will. And I do have a GIS map that I could share.
Jamie, just so I make sure I heard you correctly, are you, two things. One, I think you said this may be an opportunity for agent approval, but did you say that you wanted to visit the site before that situation?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, as part of the process of doing an agent review, I'd probably go out to the site just to confirm I didn't have any further questions regarding the limit of the wetland area, which I believe you guys can see the GIS map showing that it is along right up to the edge of the pond. And basically confirm that access can be, that no vegetation is removed that doesn't need to be removed, essentially. But it is very limited where the septic can go, and obviously a septic system isn't exactly a luxury.
Commissioner Grunwald, I would see no problem having this put down as turned over to agent approval. Obviously, they need a septic system for the house, and it's at least looks like it's about 40 feet from the pond where they're working. So I don't see, as long as they take the proper precautions, I don't see any problem with having Jamie review it and approve it.
Is that a view that is shared by the commission at large?
This is Commissioner Boda. I agree.
Commissioner Kraus, I agree as well.
Commissioner Papantonis, I agree as well.
Commissioner Begemon, agree.
Commissioner Kraus?
Oh, sorry. I said I agree.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's okay, sorry.
I'll make it unanimous.
Jamie, if you just want to let me know, sorry, Jim Prady again, if you just want to let me know when you'd like to visit the site, I can make the arrangements.
Okay.
Next up, inland wetland 211002, 61 Flax Mill Road, which is the new single-family home.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Again, just to set the stage, this application is for receipt. It may also qualify as an agent approval. A lot of the activity is beyond the 100-foot upland review area. One thing I do want to point out is that the wetland delineation on the map is for an off-site investigation. And there's been no new wetland investigation. So that's something the commission might want to consider as to whether the information provided on the wetland location is sufficient.
Just Commissioner Basser, what's the date of the information that we have, Jamie? How old?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I'm not sure the date of the delineation that's referenced.
I have the map.
Mr. Preddy, yes?
Yes, I'll start. I'll clarify that as we go. Jim Preddy again, 420 East Main Street, Brantford. 61 Flax Mill Road. I'm going to share the screen. Not that one, this one. It's an existing lot on Flax Mill Road. There's a house on either side currently. The site does slope from Flax Mill Road down toward the back. There is a wetland area that was done for this property off-site. That's what Jamie's talking about. There was a wetland delineation that came on, and because it was off the property, they kind of stopped and then started again over here. There is in between our activity a pipeline, a water pipe easement and a sewer pipe easement. And so, I mean, all our activity mostly is outside of the 100-foot area. Here's the 100-foot area right along this line here. This is the only part that's really outside of it, with the exception of the sanitary lateral that needs to come down to the sewer main that runs through the property. I did talk to Jamie about that. I mean, there are some trees in the back here. Well, there's trees all over the place, but as far as the trees outside of the area, we do have some flexibility with that sewer lateral and can kind of fit it in the field as we go to try to avoid any significant tree removal. But here's the plan is there is a garage over here. And again, we're dealing with some slope here on this lot. So we're coming in on the lower end. And there's a garage at this end at the main level of the house. It's a one-story house, a ranch house. And then there's a walkout basement on the back, and there's a garage under the side of the house. We do have the house plans I could show to kind of clarify that. But we are showing silt fence basically down along the whole property line, along the back of the limits here, and then along the other property line, topsoil stockpile area, construction entrance. Again, just because of the grades here, we did have to fill a little bit around the back. So there is, again, this area right here that's within the 100-foot buffer. And then the sewer lateral obviously has to come down and connect into the sewer line. The point that I chose here was from there's a stub that was left for this property when that sewer was put in. And that's the approximate location of the stub from the engineering department records. But again, if we needed to angle this and come up the hill at a slightly different location, that we could figure that out in the field as we go. But we would put some silt fence around this so that, the trenching would be protected from migrating any farther east. That's it. Single family home, public utility connections other than, the gas and water are in the road, but the sewer, again, is in the back.
Mr. Peretti, is this a house that's being proposed like this as on the plan, or is this a general application for the property to be developed with a house?
No, this is a house for the Fowlers. In fact, here's the house that they're going to build. You can see here's kind of a rendering of it, and this is the front elevation. And then there's the side with the garage under on the end. But you know, it's a little bit spread out because of it's a ranch, but I think because of the height regulations in town, it couldn't be a 2-story house because you have to take the average grade and it does drop off. So they are trying to work, you know, trying to fit it into the slope as best as we can.
Jamie, Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, your comment about an updated delineation. Can you say more about that?
I was going to mention that I do have. Can you see that? Can you see the different map now?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, now, yeah. Yep.
Okay. So this was the LWF survey of that rear piece, and you can see that here's our lot. The wetland comes in here, and then because they were off property, stopped, and then they started again. I mean, if you looked at the contours and the FEMA line, it 99% sure it doesn't really migrate any farther upstream than what we show on this other plan. You can see the way the contours are all curved this way here.
Pretty consistent.
But this plan, to answer your question, let me go back. This was 1999 was this LWF map.
I guess, I don't know, given the lack of variation on the existing 99 delineation, is there much to be gained by an update?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I think the majority of the activity is pretty far away from the wetland. So if the commission is comfortable with the information on hand, I think that could be reasonable. And any future activity that might be beyond the proposed limit of disturbance or silt fence would trigger needing the updated wetland delineation. However, that is up to the commission to decide. Ultimately, there's a little corner where there's probably a little bit of on-site wetlands in the southeast corner of the site.
Right here.
But the upland of review area was kind of extrapolated, assuming that. So I think it's a pretty reasonable approach.
Commissioner Greenwich, I believe that this can be given to Jamie as wetlands officer to handle administratively. The amount of grading is within the 100 foot is very minimal, and the only real activity is putting in that sewer line, and that's a pretty cut and dried thing, and none of it approaches the wetlands itself. So I would recommend that we let Jamie handle this administratively.
Is that the general feeling amongst the commissioners?
This is Commissioner Boda, I agree.
Commissioner Begum.
Are there anyone that would not recommend agent approval? Okay.
Thank you.
Inland Wetland 211003, 49 and 81-111 Commercial Parkway, the construction of a last mile e-commerce station. Materials in your packet. We believe we have somebody for this application on the call this evening.
You do, Mr. Chairman?
Before you start, Mr. Nuff, Jamie, is there anything that you've asked Mr. Nuff to pay particular attention to in what he's going to present tonight?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Not particularly. We did talk a little bit about the stormwater management and how important that is given the watershed. And I will hand it over to the applicant without further comment.
Sure. Thanks, Jamie. What's that?
I said the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut. And I'm here tonight on behalf of FSI Acquisitions, LLC. FSI is the contract purchaser of the subject parcels at 49 and 81 through 111 Commercial Parkway. This is an application to conduct regulated activities for the purpose of constructing a distribution and e-commerce last mile facility. So it's important to note that we have no wetlands or watercourses on our sites, but just off site, there is a narrow drainage swale that runs along the connector that just a small portion of our site drains into. Nevertheless, we're taking the opportunity to make very significant environmental improvements. Jamie's been really helpful in terms of, offering her thoughts. And I think that the commission is going to be pleased once we dig into the details of the commission. So we appreciate her inputs. Very quickly, the site is comprised of 21.5 acres. We're located in the BLHR zone. That's a local business hybrid rear zone. Warehousing, distribution, e-commerce, and fulfillment centers are permitted subject to special exception approval. Now, what's interesting is that this is the only zone where this use is permitted, and this is the only property in that zone. So this site has been specifically targeted for this use by the town. That was all before my client acquired the property or went into contract to acquire the property. I think you all know that these properties have been vacant for literally decades. So this is a really wonderful opportunity to make them productive again, certainly in terms of a significant contribution to your grand list, but more importantly, from your perspective, also making truly significant improvements to stormwater quality. Not only will the stormwater quality be much improved, but we're reducing the rate of stormwater runoff from the site. We're reducing the volume of stormwater runoff from the site. And we're doing this by reducing the impervious coverage currently on site and infiltrating a portion of our stormwater to comply with the MS4 requirements. And we're also very cognizant of the fact that there are downstream flooding concerns, and we certainly do not want to do anything to exacerbate those concerns. So with that quick introduction, I want to introduce our professional engineer, Dennis Godier from BL Companies, who's going to walk you through the site plan very quickly. And then we also have Matt Davison, with whom I know the commission is very familiar, who's just going to talk about the wetlands and the stormwater treatment and a little bit about functions and values of that one little sliver of wetlands that is located off site. So with that, I'll give you to Dennis.
Thank you, Attorney Nuff. Dennis Godier, I'm a senior project manager with BL Companies. I am a licensed landscape architect and certified planner. I'm not a professional engineer. We do have Jeff Dewey from BL Companies here as well, who is a PE of record, who can also answer some questions. As Attorney Nuff had mentioned, the site's 21.5 acres. It's located between Commercial Parkway and the Brantford Connector, with the access from the Commercial Parkway across the street from Walmart. As I'm sure you're aware, the site has been substantially developed for many years. There's existing building pads that remain, as well as a substantial amount of existing pavement, equaling over 85% of the property being impervious coverage between building and pavement itself. Before you is the proposed site plan. You will see the building located on the south side, which is on the right side of the page here, is the delivery station of 98,000 square feet approximately. This is serviced by a loading area where deliveries will come in, and then they would be sorted and loaded onto delivery vans where they will then depart the site through this drive. Parking area to the south is for employees, and the parking area to the north are primarily for the delivery vans, which also has infrastructure for EV charging for electric vehicles. There is one wetland pocket located here, and you can see the upland review area, and I'll provide a little more detail on that later. And then the other offsite wetland finger located down here to the south west. And then you can see the upland review area as well. Specific to the regulated activities, for the northern wetland, there is the small area here, which would be some pavement as well as landscaping within that upland review area. Again, no filling of the wetlands. And then along the southeastern wetland finger, it is landscaping, retaining walls, and then pavement to accommodate the circulation of the site. Overall, we are reducing the amount of impervious coverage within the upland review area by almost 35%. So there's almost 19,000 square feet of impervious coverage that exists today. And we propose to bring that down to just over 12,000 square feet for a total of about 0.81 acres of activity within the upland review area. That's not all new activity. That is just the total of where we are proposing. And this dashed line right here represents where the existing edge of pavement of the parking lot is currently today. This graphic represents the proposed stormwater management system. There's primarily, I'll say, three systems. Starting on the north, we have a subsurface detention system that collects the runoff from the parking area before it is discharged off-site. There is another system in the middle which collects from the parking and then the van loading area. And I should also mention that the van loading area has a canopy. So there's a roof over the pavement. This discharges into a above grade stormwater management basin, which then outlets out at this point before finding its way out into this wetland finger. There is a rain garden all along this landscaped island as well to help with stormwater quality and infiltration. And then the third area is another subsurface detention facility, which handles the water before it is discharged into the existing pipe network, which is then brought underneath the Brantford connector. There is also a small fourth system that collects runoff from the driveway for the vans that exit the site, and then is discharged into a level spreader. And I think at that point, I will turn it over to Matt Davison to discuss a little bit more about the wetlands.
Thanks, Dennis. Again, for the record, Matt Davison with Davison Environmental. I am a professional soil scientist, a professional wetland scientist, a certified forester, and a certified professional in erosion and sediment control. As John had mentioned earlier, we investigated this site in October of 2020 for wetlands, and we did not find any wetlands on the site. The wetlands that are subject to this application are located off-site, and essentially the wetland that comes closest to our activities is a man-made stormwater conveyance, essentially a constructed swale that runs along the on-ramp to I-95. I have submitted a wetland impact assessment, which the commission has. In that wetland impact assessment, I discussed the wetland functions and values associated with that wetland. And the principal functions and values, as would be expected in a wetland that was constructed to treat stormwater, are principally what I consider the water quality functions. So sediment, toxicant, pollutant retention. And those functions are provided at a principal level for two reasons. One, that wetland is what we consider effective at providing that function because physically it has physical characteristics that promote those functions. It has a low gradient. It's densely vegetated with emergent vegetation. So stormwater basically passes through that wetland, and as it passes through, the dense vegetation attenuates pollutants and sediment. It also has the opportunity to provide those functions because it was constructed along the Brantford connector essentially to pick up stormwater. So not only is it effective at providing those functions, but it has the opportunity to provide those functions. And for those reasons, we assigned it as having principal functions for water quality. There's another wetland that's located off-site to the north of the site, off the northwest corner. That wetland area there, we essentially that wetland was delineated prior to our involvement in the site. It's also very difficult to get to. It's located off-site. There's very difficult access off the connector. So we just adopted the previous delineation, which appears to be accurate. The wetland swale that runs along the connector, while we typically don't delineate off-site wetlands, in this particular case, we were able to access that area by walking up the connector. So we did flag it, and obviously the flags are shown on this drawing. As Dennis mentioned, really the stormwater, I think, is highlighted here in the enhancement of stormwater treatment on this site. Currently, the site is, for the most part, impervious. It's remnant bituminous cover, and there's really no stormwater treatment on the site now. It's a closed system. It's essentially secondary treatment practices like catch basins. And a lot of the stormwater treatment measures which are being proposed here, while this could be considered a redevelopment, and often with redevelopment, secondary treatment practices are acceptable for redevelopments. There is incorporation of a lot of primary treatment in this particular development. Notably, the stormwater basin would be considered primary treatment, assuming that it's constructed in accordance with the 2004 guidelines. Additionally, the underground infiltration systems provide treatment that could be considered primary. They're effective enough to be considered primary treatment. The systems that are being proposed have actually been tested by University of New Hampshire. In specifically the underground infiltration with the incorporation of what's called an isolator row to these systems. The UNH studies showed that these systems are highly effective at removing pollutants, similar to what primary treatment measures would provide. So, certainly the stormwater treatment measures on this site will be substantially enhanced from what is existing today. And I think additionally, what's important to note, and I think it's very important specifically in a developed landscape like this, is that we are actually reducing the impervious cover on this site. Dennis quoted those numbers to you. But also, in addition to decreasing impervious cover on the site, we are also decreasing impervious cover within the upland review area on the site. Currently, the upland review areas on the site have about 0.43 acres of impervious cover, and post-development that will be reduced to about 0.281. I think that the outlet points for the stormwater basin have been logically positioned to be at the tip of the swale that's located off-site, and I think that's a good logical location for that because you are taking advantage of the principal functions associated with that wetland and allowing for a longer travel time within that wetland for the stormwater that'll be discharged to it. And again, that stormwater that's discharged to it will receive treatment prior to discharge to the uplands adjacent. So I think this is, from a wetland impact standpoint, and as my report noted, I do not anticipate any adverse impacts to the off-site wetlands from this development. And I think overall, this is an improvement of the site from a wetland standpoint.
Thanks, Matt. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have. Obviously, you're just receiving the application this evening, but we're happy to answer any questions. I mean, we're really proud of the design. Obviously, a lot of time and effort has been put into it to, as the other presenters have indicated, to make very important improvements to the stormwater quality. we're anxious to keep going, frankly. But so we're happy to answer any questions. We gave you or submitted a very, very thorough application that frankly exceeded the requirements of your regulations. One of those is a memo regarding why this is not a significant activity. I don't think there's any argument that it is, but that it is not, that we do not propose a significant activity. But we would very much like to keep the process moving as efficiently as possible. We look forward to a very thorough review, as this commission always does, but we're trying to make sure it's an efficient process as well. Mr. Chairman, I think you're muted.
Let me repeat, Mr. Knopf, thank you for your statement regarding looking to push this forward, and I'm sure we're going to do everything we can to be on not only the review, but to make sure that the time marches on here. I did have one question when I looked at the material that was submitted that I'm not sure I understand completely, and maybe you guys can make me smarter. It seemed that the detention areas included 100-year storms, but somehow I read that the piping only handled a 25-year storm. I'm not sure I understand why that's the case.
Jeff Dewey, if you could answer that question, please.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. Good evening. My name is Jeff Dewey. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I work with BL companies, and I'm a senior design engineer for this project. It's a very good question. Typically, and not typically, the normal, I've never seen a piping collection and conveyance system designed for a 100-year storm. Typically, design standards for different hydraulic features vary. For instance, typical piping designs are only a 10-year storm, whereas streams would be more of a 25-year storm, and significant streams would be a 50-year storm. And the 100-year storm is just your worst case scenario, just to make sure that there are no detrimental impacts downstream. Sorry, that's the long answer. But basically, standard engineering practice is for piping systems to either be a 10 or a 25-year storm. And sir, your town requires a 25-year storm in your subdivision regulations. So we opted for the more conservative 25-year storm design.
Thank you. Let me ask this question. It's again, Chairman Vasserman. The area to the north, which I think you or somebody indicated would be where the vehicles were parked. How many spaces are there for those vehicles?
There are 539 delivery van parking spaces on site, and there are 213 parking spaces for employees and visitors.
And of that 500 plus vehicles that are there, I assume that that some percentage of those are on the road at any given time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they're on the road typically from around 9 o'clock in the morning to early evening when the last packages are delivered, and then they return to the facility, and then that driver would then exit the van and get into his or her personal vehicle and then drive home.
Okay, thank you. Does the commission feel that this project is worthy of a site walk?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think a site walk would be appropriate.
This is Commissioner Papantonis, I agree.
Commissioner Kraus, I agree. And I have one other question. How big is that rain garden?
As far as lengthwise, I apologize, I don't have a scale on here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's about 600 feet long and about 20 feet wide, 30 feet wide.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Begemon. I may have missed this. Where is the water from the roof going?
The roof leaders are collected, Jeff. Some of them are coming into the yellow system, and are some of them going into the green as well, Jeff?
Yes, Dennis, that is correct. The roof is split where approximately a third of the roof area goes towards the east or towards the green system, and the majority of the roof, 2/3, goes towards the west or the yellow, the surface detention basin.
As a follow-up to Commissioner Bigeman's question, is Commissioner Basserman. Did you mention that there was going to be a canopy over some of the parking?
There's a canopy over the van loading area, so that there's overhead doors where the packages come out of the facility to be loaded onto the vans, and then to protect from weather for efficiency of loading, and to protect the goods, if you will, as they get onto the van. That's the purpose of the canopy. And this dashed line represents the limit of that canopy.
And the rainwater from that canopy goes where?
That is also, that goes into the stormwater system that's highlighted in yellow.
All of it?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Do we want to schedule a Skype walk, or unless there's other questions?
Yeah, just one more. This is Commissioner Boda. So can you talk a little bit about construction and the grading of the site, if you're bringing in, if you're removing the earthwork that's happening? It looks like there's several stockpiles planned for around the site. Can you talk about the construction plan a little bit?
Jeff Dewey, if you could respond, please.
Sure, I would be happy to. I'd like to begin, and I apologize. I just realized I'm not showing my video. That is kind of rude. I apologize for that. Obviously, we have an erosion control plan that has been designed in accordance, if not beyond, the DEP requirements for construction. For the most part, we have on the northern portion of the site, we have some minor fills in the northwest corner, roughly where the green or aqua teal system is shown on the current plan that shows on your screen. To the west of that, there will be some cuts, nothing substantial, around 4 to 5 feet on the average. As we move southerly down through the site, we start to get into a fill. The building will, at the beginning of the building, it will be pretty close to the existing grade. And as we move further southerly, there'll be more and more fill. So at the southern end of the site, as you can see, there's 2 parallel lines that are on the side of the van delivery driveway. Those are retaining walls. So we're using retaining walls to limit the amount of fill required to get us the appropriate slopes for the parking lot in that area.
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. I just wanted to ask about perk tests relative to where the stormwater management is proposed. Taking a quick look at the application checklist, it looks like there were no perk tests completed. Can you respond to that? And if there's an assumption as to the amount of perk in the calculations, or if the construction allows for you to be confident in what those rates will be?
Okay, Jamie, I'm happy to answer that question. Again, Jeff Dewey with BL Companies. We have, as you know, 3 basically detention and filtration basins, 2 subsurface, 1 on the surface. We currently have detailed infiltration testing being performed. We expect the results momentarily. So as a conservative approach in the design, although we know from previous borings that were done on the site was the subject to a couple subsurface studies that resulted in multiple borings throughout the site. And there's basically the substrata is a sand gravel mix with some silts, but mostly sands and gravel. So we know we have good material underlying everything. And basically, as a conservative approach, when we're doing a drainage design, we like to not include infiltration in the calculation to maintain a conservative system. We know that with the incorporation of infiltration, that it will increase the capacity of these detention infiltration systems. But again, we like to play it conservative, worst case scenarios. But we anticipate infiltration rates that will be appropriate for infiltration systems, as well as meet the DEP requirement to have these systems drain within 72 hours. Once I get the final infiltration test results, I will provide them to you and staff and the commission for review, as well as time for these systems to drain, so you can see that they will drain well within the DEP required 72 hours.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. One more question. Is the first inch of stormwater being retained on site, or is it the water quality volume?
It is, again, Jeff Dewey with BL Companies. It is essentially one and the same. The DEP method of calculating water quality volume is multiplying the 1 inch over all the impervious areas, which is most of the site. So, and yes, the systems will 100% retain this water quality volume with no discharge.
Any other questions from the commission? About scheduling that site walk? We want to do that a week before? The next meeting?
Are we looking at
meeting?
Are we looking at a Saturday, because we're losing afternoon daylight very quickly?
So just a quick reminder, the next meeting is a week early because of Veterans Day. So the next meeting is November 4th. So if we were to do it a week before, it would be October 28th, and sunset, I believe, is
clocks don't change there.
Around 5:50. So you would probably want to have the site walk at 5:15ish, just so you don't run into daylight issues.
That may be a problem, because I think we've tried to do 5 o'clocks before, and people have other commitments. I'm okay with a Saturday if that is the commission's desire.
So
I hate to say
Saturday.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the Saturday before would be October 30th, if that works for people.
Yeah. I know it's not a great. It's a little Halloween's coming, kid time stuff, but maybe in the morning, like a 9 a.m. Is that terrible?
Costumes optional?
I have a commitment, but I'm sure you'll have a quorum.
What's on the table is 9 o'clock, October 30th, for a site walk at the 4981 111 Commercial Parkway. Everybody okay with that?
Is anyone okay with
that? I may not be able to make that, but I may.
Is there a better time? That was one that I threw out, but if somebody's got a better time.
I can do the late afternoon one. I don't know what other people's schedules are.
What are the two choices of dates?
There's one which is Saturday, 9 o'clock, and then
Is that the 30th of October?
Right. I don't know that we picked another other than a late afternoon on some date.
Okay. I am not available on the 30th of October. My apologies.
I am not either. Melissa Papantonis.
And Clarice may not be as well. So it looks like we probably need to pick a different date.
I can do other dates that are not Thursday. I don't know about anybody else.
How about the Tuesday before the November meeting?
That's voting day, I think.
Oh, okay, right. Following day?
What date is that?
That's Wednesday, the 3rd?
But then our time will have changed.
No, I don't think.
No, it changes week after.
Oh, okay.
Is 4:30 doable? 4:45, can people get there that early?
I can.
Works for me.
I can.
Oh, 4:45 is a winner.
4:45 on Wednesday. And that would be
November 3rd.
November 3rd.
3rd, yep.
That works for me.
And what was that time again?
4:45.
4:45?
Right.
Thank you.
And Attorney Nuff, where should we meet on site?
Good question. Jeff, can you maybe put your screen back up and we can identify location? I mean, it's absolutely wide open. I think we'll all see, 14 cars all assembled together. So I don't think it'd be hard to find each other, but I think we'll probably want to drive across over as close to the wetlands as possible.
Isn't it all fenced in?
No, we can make sure that we have access. Obviously we're speaking to the property owner.
Okay, I just meant there's that fence running along the road.
I can certainly communicate with Jamie. She's terrific in terms of being responsive. She and I can communicate exactly where we're going to, where the gate will be for the fence and where we can park. But my guess is, we'll all want to be as close to the wetlands as possible.
Okay,
perfect.
So you'll work it out with Jamie, and then Jamie will let us know. Good.
And it sounds like somebody from the applicant team can be present?
Absolutely. So probably more than one of us.
Okay. And just real quick, commissioners, is there anything that you want to have marked out in the field for reference purposes?
Yeah, I think it would be, this is Commissioner Boda, I think it would be helpful to have the basins noted, and I think probably the corners of the building.
Okay, I'm sure we can do that.
Commissioner Papantonis, and then I'm assuming Commissioner Boda intended this also, but the rain garden area.
So probably the stormwater locations in general, stormwater management locations.
What about the end of the retention wall for the the south? The edge of that, Commissioner Begemon. I think that would be good to know where that is.
We'll do our best to indicate where all the primary construction activities will be taking place, whether it's the stormwater basins in the building, the canopy, the rain garden, the retaining wall. So.
Great. Our plans show, this is Dennis Godair, BL Companies. Our plans do show a limit of disturbance. We can stake out where that limit of disturbance line would be in relation to the wetlands as well. And we'll make sure that the wetland flags are out there as well for you.
Thank you. That'd be helpful.
That's great.
Any last comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, before we leave, and we had commented earlier about trying to make this as an efficient process. I'm going to assume that since we're concluding this, that there's no desire on the commission's part to deem this to be significant. We want to make sure that once we get to before you on November 4th, that we can actually have a substantive meeting, and there's that we don't need to make any other decisions that evening. That's one of the reasons why we try to give you a thorough presentation this evening. So I don't think this warrants a third-party review, and certainly you have staff that is more than capable of reviewing our data. I don't think this warrants a public hearing or a significant activity, but we really like to get those things out of the way so that we can actually have a really substantive meeting with you next month and present everything in full.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Basserman. I think, first of all, hopefully the site walk doesn't, reveal anything that would be a surprise. Number two, I think this has been only recently received. I'm sure staff has not had an opportunity to go through all of its review. And until that happens, I'm not going to make a commitment right now that this is not a significant activity.
I mean, we would be happy to answer any other questions. It was one of the reasons why we gave you a memo detailing the 7 criteria of significant activities, or actually 8 criteria. We don't trigger any one of those. That was sort of the goal.
There is also the opportunity for the public to intervene here.
No. Certainly if you get signatures of 25 people, it's going to be a public hearing. But listen, we're certainly not concerned about a public hearing. But a public hearing is different from a significant activity determination. The latter, of course, requires a public hearing, but you can require a public hearing even without a determination that is significant. And, so we're not troubled by any of that. We're not troubled by a very thorough review. Our only concern is to make the process efficient. So
we share that, but I'm not going to put the cart before the horse.
Well, if other members of the commission have any questions, one of the reasons, again, as I indicated, that's why one of the reasons why we want to give you a very thorough presentation this evening, so we can get some of the logistics out of the way in terms of third party and significant and public hearing and those sorts of things.
Commissioner Greenwald, based upon the material that's been presented at this point, it wouldn't, in my mind, require to be significant. However, we are going to have a site walk, which will give us a lot better indication of whether there is any element that might be hasn't been exposed as of this point. So I have to agree with Commissioner Basserman that we should hold off making that final decision till next meeting.
Are we ready to move on here? Thank you.
Commissioner Boda, yes.
Very, very thorough presentation. We certainly have a good feel for what the project entails. I think that a lot of thought has gone into the design. That should be apparent when we review the material in full and do the site walk. So I am hopeful that things will go quickly on the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Next up, Inland Wetland 21-1004, 159 Cherry Hill Road, installation of a fence and patio.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. This is a pretty straightforward application. I believe it would be a prime candidate for agent approval. I believe that I saw the owner is on the call in case the commission has any questions. The gist of the project is this is, I believe, lot 15 of the 99 Todd's Hill subdivision that was approved by the commission back in 2019. There is an offsite wetland, and what the property owner is looking to do is fence in the rear portion of the yard and install a small patio. So the only ground disturbance is for the patio and for the posts for the fence. They do not plan on removing any vegetation for the installation of the fence and would go around trees if need be.
Just Commissioner Baxter, what type of fence?
I do not recall off the top of my head.
We're a little close to the wetland on the left here, right?
A little bit, but not terribly close.
I don't know what the scale is.
Unfortunately, I did not remember that there was not a scale on there. However, the upland review area is this line right here. So this is 100 feet from the wetland.
Gotcha.
Probably, if I had to guess, about 25 feet, nice 25 feet.
And is the applicant on the call?
Yes, sir, I'm on the call. It's going to be a 4-foot black chain link fence. There's a land trust property behind us with a pond. So we'd like for people that drive by that are going to visit the land trust to be able to see back there. You wouldn't be able to if it was a white fence. So we're thinking the 4-foot black chain link.
And do you know how they intend to, this is Commissioner Bassman, do you know how they intend to set the posts for that fence?
Yeah, so it's going to be 2.5-inch terminal posts with 1 5/8 line poles, 1 3/8 top rail, 6-gauge bottom cable.
Yeah, but how are they going to get the post in the ground?
They're going to dig into the ground. It's a mixed cement post footing, but we're not going to bother. We won't be cutting any trees down, and we won't be moving any shrubs or any vegetation at all.
Machine to dig the holes or not?
I don't believe so. The company that we've received quotes from, it appears they're going to be doing it by hand.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I would agree. It looks like a good candidate for agent approval. Anybody disagree?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think it should go to agent approval.
Anybody feel different?
Commissioner Grenell, no, I agree. Agent approval.
Okay.
Commissioner Kraus, I agree.
Commissioner Papantonis, I think you can make it unanimous.
Great. Thank you for the summary and presentation. Next up, applications for review. Inland Wetland 210801, 175 Cherry Hill Road, which is an 11-lot subdivision. Looks like this item is tabled, but we have a fee assessment review for this evening.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. The applicant requested that the item be tabled because they're responding to comments that the commission had at the last meeting. There is a fee assessment for review. However, I told them that probably would not be considered at this point until the additional materials are presented. I think we have that on there as a reminder. But I think it would be appropriate to table that item as well.
Thank you. I think that's been our practice, so I agree. Okay, Inland Wetland 210802, 61 and 6599 Bourbon Drive, a multifamily residential development. Also looks like a fee reduction request on this as well.
Mr. Chairman, John Duff again for the record, 147 Broad Street in Milford, and here tonight on behalf of the applicant. With me is Todd Ritchie, professional engineer with SLR. We were before you a couple months ago, actually. The first night we were there, we discussed the possibility of agent approval. Jamie dug into the details a little bit, had a bunch of questions and comments. We have responded favorably to all those comments and questions, including the modification of the plan on the abutting parcel of property. And so Jamie has given you a series of conditions of approval, all of which we would be happy to accept as conditions. She asked us that we should probably discuss with you a little bit about the most important change in the plan, which is the work that would be taking place on the abutting parcel, and you have the authorization of the abutting property owner for that work. Just as a quick reminder, this site currently has no stormwater treatment, and so one of the proposals is for us to provide stormwater treatment where none exists. So with that, let me give you Todd Ritchie, and he can share the site plan and describe the work that has changed from when you first saw this.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Todd Ritchie. I'm a professional engineer with SLR. As John mentioned, one of the items in the last round of comments from Jamie was about the stormwater pipes. You have one that currently flows from the wetlands to the north, to the south, underneath the building. And then you have various, and that channelizes the overflow from the wetlands. And then you have various on-site drainage pipes that also flow to the same location and terminate through an existing head wall that's right off the driveway. So the request was made, since this is a site that's been sort of in disrepair for some time now, and certainly the stormwater system hasn't been paid attention for quite some time, that this area has certainly over time gained sediment. It's equalized between the two locations for its amount of flow that it passes through to the north and to the south. So to clean this out while we have the opportunity with the equipment out there, establish a stabilized outlet for the future, and also a location that can be maintained from sediment in the future. So we've proposed a scour hole, which I'll show a detail in a minute, but this is the location right at the head wall here. We've sized it for the 100-year storm per DOT standards. It's 12 feet long by 10 feet wide, and there's a depth that I'll show you on the detail. And there'll be just a tracking pad down for a piece of equipment such as an excavator to sit basically in a stationary position here, and then be able to excavate out and ferry the material up to this location and onto trucks, and then also to then offload riprap type material to replace the excavated material and provide the stabilization. I'll show the detail sheet that we added this to, just one second. So here's the preformed scour hole made of riprap material. So this will be at a 3-to-1 slope down from the outside edge of it. So it will, I don't know, see what the depth, I don't know that we call it. We do have a depth of 12 inches over here. So once this gets filled up to within 6 inches of the lowest pipe that actually discharges to the scour hole, we've recommended in the notes here that this be maintained and monitored so that that material that fills in this area, which is 120 square feet, can be removed. And that can be done by hand in the future, or some sort of like vacuum truck that usually cleans out catch basins, which would be needed anyways for the on-site catch basins for maintenance of those. I don't know if you have any questions about that.
Commissioner Bassman, yeah, given your calculations, how often does that scour hole need to be cleaned out?
Well, obviously it's all dependent upon it wouldn't be from on-site sediment, because we're proposing and I'll go back to the site plan. Just to remind you, I'm sure you've seen this, but as a reminder, we have a stormwater treatment unit here, right before the discharge to this location. And then we have a stormwater treatment unit we're adding here, right again before the discharge to this location. So all of the driveway areas will stormwater will be passed through these treatment units that don't currently exist. These are contact type units that, in addition to removing sediment, remove floatables and oils and grease type material, trash, those types of things. So the sediment will accumulate in these from the on-site surfaces. So really the only main concern for sediment accumulating here is anything that gets washed through from upstream through the culvert from the wetlands. And that's not something that we can, predict what the nature of that sediment loading would be. But again, it's periodic. We recommend it to be monitored every 6 months or so, typically, in the spring and fall after the leaves come down, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Jamie, I think just to show, you had also mentioned last time about some missing sediment erosion controls along Bourbon Drive. We've added those inlet protections and that sediment silt fence. I believe that was just something that didn't show up on our plan, but it was there.
This is Commissioner Kraus. Can I ask a question? I assume the property owner or the developer will monitor and keep those stormwater basins clean and clear. But how about the ones on Bourbon Drive? Will the town become responsible for those or still the property owner?
Are you talking about these ones here, the catch basins?
Yes.
Yeah, the catch basins on Bourbon Drive are on town property, so that is the town's responsibility.
Okay, but the other ones will continue to be the developers even after it's all completed?
After everything's completed, everything but the Bourbon Drive catch basins will be part of the development.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission regarding the change to the plan? Jamie, can you post those conditions of approval?
Jamie, you're muted.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. So the first condition is pretty standard inspections. I don't know if you want me to go through all of them or if you want to read them.
Yeah,
and then
why don't
let me
we
know if
read
you have
them?
questions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think the print is large enough where I can read it, so. Jamie, I can't remember on this application, were there vegetation that was added?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. There are some proposed plantings. I wouldn't call them wetland enhancement plantings. They're more along the lines of landscaping, island.
All right, so I know we didn't have the monitoring of the plantings in there, and that's the reason you're saying is they're really not wetland issues.
That would be correct.
Okay. Is there anything that you would want to add at this point?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. I can respond to any questions commissioners have, but I think I've outlined my main points in these 6 possible conditions for consideration.
Yeah. Does any commissioner have, first of all, issues with any of the 6 presented? Is there any commissioner that wants to add a condition of approval? Is there a motion regarding this application with these conditions of approval as part and parcel of that motion?
This is Commissioner Boda. I don't know, before we go to approval, I just I'm looking back at the office, the staff report, and I'm wondering if that's really not where the conversation needs to start.
Can you say more, Commissioner Bono?
Well, so we've got stormwater runoff curve number has been provided for pre and post. Okay, so that peak runoff rates and volumes not provided. Just want to make sure, because I just don't want to rush through and we miss something, because now they've made their presentation and now we're just going to approval. I personally would like to take a second and look at the staff report more closely and make sure that we're satisfied, so that we're not just going through the steps without considering what's in that staff report.
Seems fair. Jamie, can you post the staff report?
It's above the conditions.
Oh, okay. Yep, thank you. Jamie, you're muted.
Sorry, I was having a hard time finding unmute while I was screen sharing. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So regarding the stormwater, I just wanted to identify that peak runoff rates and volumes not provided. That is something that the commission can request. It has not specifically been requested for this application, but I had noted it during my preliminary review of the application. And then as I continue to review the application, one of the things that had been mentioned previously was the fact that they're not retaining the first inch on site, to which they provided the response copied below. They also were requested to look at installing a rain garden in the landscaped area, which they responded to as well separately, which I put, I believe, in the landscaping comments section of the staff report.
So I guess, so this is Commissioner Bodo. So can we start with then this issue of capturing the first inch? So I'm seeing a rationale as to why, and I guess what I'm not really seeing is what is being done in lieu. Stormwater retention and infiltration on property would not be effective. And so what? So then we're just sending it off site. Like, can you talk a little bit more about then, so what? Like, we can't do it, so then what?
I'll let Todd respond substantively, but I would just remind it, and I know we first presented this application several months ago in the spring. So this is a site for which we are doing literally no work. We're not expanding the footprint of the building. We're barely expanding the development envelope of the paved area. I mean, we're making these changes to enhance the stormwater. That's it. So we're not gaining anything in terms of development opportunities by virtue of this application. It's purely and entirely in an effort to improve the stormwater quality leaving the site. I mean, we could in fact use the site in its current configuration with no changes whatsoever. We didn't think that was the right thing to do. So that's sort of the background and the larger context, but I'll let Todd respond as to the other substance.
Thank you, Attorney Neff. That's helpful.
Thank you. Jamie, can I share my screen for 1 second?
Should be able to now.
Thank you. Again, Todd Ritchie with SLR. So just based on the drainage summary, so when we say two things.
Could you make that just a little larger?
Absolutely. Sure.
Actually, a lot larger.
Sure. Is that good for you?
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. So when we talk about rate and volume, and water quality for that matter too. So when we do our analysis, essentially, if the area is essentially the same as far as impervious, which we essentially are, we're very close, and the time of concentration is the same, and the curve number in this case doesn't change, then the peak rate of runoff, its peak rate of runoff will remain unchanged. And that's what we've made the determination about. We don't need to necessarily calculate the rates because in this case, because we're saying they're not changing. We could do that. We were just basically saying nothing's changing to result in changes to the peak rates. But on the other hand, with water quality, we have the 1 inch, but there's also what they call the water quality flow in the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. So you could provide it either way. You could either retain 1 inch on the property, or you could provide and infiltrate it, or you could actually provide a primary treatment system such as the contact hydrodynamic separators that we're proposing to treat the water quality flow. And we've provided those calculations. They're in the drainage report here. We can refer to those if you'd like. But I just wanted to kind of look at big pictures along of the lines of what John was talking about. We're actually not, when you look at the summary of net change, I kind of like to put things together this way because it makes it simpler to look at than other calculations and numbers in like the engineers do. But this is a summary that I think anybody could understand. It's like the net change. This is what we have existing, this is what we have proposed, and then that's what's happening, plus or minus, So we actually have asphalt driveway and parking areas being reduced. So that's the main change that's causing the increase, say, of 983, which still doesn't change because of all the other factors. It's not big enough to change the peak rate of flow from the property, is that we're providing a sidewalk from the building for connectivity all the way down to Bourbon Drive. Now, we're assuming that generates runoff into the stormwater drainage system, but as everybody knows, that can certainly be discharged also, depending on how it flows, into the grass areas adjacent to it and infiltrate into the grass, the topsoil, evaporate. It doesn't necessarily all get directed into the stormwater system. So a conservative approach is that you just assume that it does. And that's what we've done here. So the overall, again, the parking and the driving is being reduced. It's being optimized from what it is now. We're providing the planted islands with vegetation and for landscaping. And as Jamie mentioned, this soil classification in this area here, it's all fill, it's all urban land considered and fill, and it's in wetlands and around wetlands, and probably formerly within wetlands and areas for all we know back in the day. So it's not ideal for infiltration, and that's why we don't recommend it. And if you go out there and you actually see the roadways and the condition they're in, a lot of the reasons why they become in those sort of poor condition, the cracked and the potholes and the sort of like alligator cracking and everything else is because of the poor drainage of subsurface drainage of the soils that are on the site. So we provided the water quality, to answer your question, through and calculated it through in compliance with the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual through those proposed stormwater treatment units that we've shown on the site. I can point those out again if you'd like.
This is Commissioner Wasserman. I guess, that stormwater management manual is dated what, 2004?
Yes.
And, certainly the experience of late regarding stormwater in Connecticut is very different than the calculations that were used that supported that 2004 manual. How would you design it today if that 1 inch requirement was immovable?
Well, we don't. I mean, you're one of the towns that requires that. We work in plenty of towns that doesn't require that. So we in many towns we don't even have to address that issue because it's your requirement. Well,
I'm sure the Branford citizens are happy that we require it.
And they may be, but they probably don't understand the reasoning behind it. So I mean, but part of the reasoning behind it is for the 1 inch is if you're in a coastal area, it's for thermal reasons, not necessarily because if you keep that 1 inch of stormwater on site and infiltrate it, and you have a rainfall on a hot day in the summer, the rainfall that falls on surfaces is going to be elevated temperature relative to waterways. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better than a pass-through system for water quality. It's just a different approach to water quality for a different parameter of water quality.
Okay.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Boda. Thank you. So I think then what my takeaway is that what you're indicating is for the reasons that you've just described, the infiltration is not really, the site is not a candidate for it, but rather the other stormwater treatments systems that are on the plan are your way of addressing some of the same issues, understanding that they can't all be given the site conditions.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So bear with me. Part of the issue, and I imagine that Attorney Nuff would appreciate, is that we want to have fair and uniform application of the rules and regulations within the town of Branford. And in instances where we need to deviate from those requirements, it's incumbent upon us to indicate the rationale so that any future applicants can understand how those regulations are applied.
Yes, that's understood. Like just to reiterate, for the record, since it wasn't discussed specifically, except for being reflected in Jamie's report through our communications, the soils on the site are mapped, and it's also intuitive when you're out there. You could tell that this site it was a site that was filled. It's filled in resource area and across, obviously, because there's a pipe that channels a waterway under the building, and that the NRCS Web Soil Survey, which we use as a resource, which is the soil survey mapping that's provided. It says that it's urban land with a hydrologic classification of D, and what D means that it is very it doesn't absorb water very well. It's actually the poorest rating of the A through D, A being the best, D being the worst. So we don't want to try to introduce, in fact, most wetland soils themselves are considered to be D for hydrology. So it is comparable to hydrologically to wetland soils if you were going to analyze it from a stormwater generation standpoint.
So you're indicating it really wouldn't infiltrate, it would just back up the flood.
Correct. Yes, and correct. And we don't want to do something that's not going to work, and we don't want to do something that's going to be detrimental to the on-site improvements that are being made to the roads and to the pavement and all of that ultimately as well.
Is Commissioner Bassman. Commissioner Boda, does the response from the applicant on the 1 inch that was italicized that we looked at previously, does that fit your bill in terms of criteria of why this was not a candidate, or are you looking for something else?
No, this is Commissioner Boda. I think that the further explanation of what the situation was on this particular site, again, I think it's important when we deviate from our regulations, that we, as a commission, as a full commission, are cognizant of why it is that we would do that, and the conditions under which we would do that, and that if a commissioner is going to make a motion, that part of that motion indicate why we are deviating from our regulations. I think that that's an important step for us.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think that's a very good point. And I also just want to point out that I think there is a little bit of a difference in how the commission looks at a developed site that is being redeveloped versus a non-developed site, because retrofitting does have additional challenges that new development wouldn't necessarily have to face.
I think there were two issues. One was the 1 inch, and I can't remember what the second one was.
Commissioner Boda, the second one is landscaping, but it goes back to the soil group that Mr. Ritchie just referred to.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. Also, there's the fee reduction request, and also I just realized somebody has their hand raised. Karen's iPad, do you have your hand raised for this item?
No.
Okay.
I'm just listening.
I'm just going to lower your hand real quick. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have a comment.
Okay.
All right. So there is also the pending fee reduction request. The fee reduction request has been asked because the stormwater scour hole at the outlet was presented based on staff concern that the current stormwater system on site is pretty blocked up. So the concern was that when it's cleaned out and replaced with the new system, that the stormwater flows might be more than what is currently on site and cause some potential erosion issues. So they're requesting that the additional amount be reduced to $500 as it's an improvement to the stormwater system. That was in response to staff comment, and I certainly can hand it over to the applicant if they want to correct or clarify anything that I just said.
I'm good with that, Jamie. It's the approval, assuming there is one, is far more important to us than the fee reduction. So.
Okay, so this is Commissioner Boda. Jamie, would it, is there an order that would be preferable, assuming that the commission were to approve and then were to move forward with the fee reduction? Is there an order that would make more sense?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think the fee reduction should be considered before its decision on the application.
Okay. This is Commissioner Boda. I think that a fee reduction in this, well, let me ask you, is there any additional work that would have required, would have amounted to the $500 on the time of the office?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I'm not entirely sure. Are you asking if the additional review for the modifications would have exceeded $500?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is not wanting to pass any of that additional cost to the town. Was the office time, your and Abby's time, is that captured in what would be the reduced amount?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent, I believe it would. The total application fee would still be $2,810 for what is essentially repaving and stormwater improvement project. I think that would be reasonable from a cost of processing the application standpoint, including the monitoring reports that I've requested, making sure that we receive those.
Okay. Commissioner Boda, in that case, then I would make a motion for inland wetland 21.08.02, 61 and 65 through 99 Bourbon Drive, that we accept the fee reduction from, let me make sure I have this right. The total fee would be $2,810, and would be reduced by $1,750.
Commissioner Grenold, second.
Any further discussion on the fee reduction? I think we need to go one by one with this in terms of a vote. Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Granolch?
Commissioner Grenold, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Commissioner Kraus, aye.
Commissioner Petitonis?
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Begeman?
Abstain.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Okay, now we need to consider the matter at large for approval of the permit. And I think the conditions of approval are, we reviewed. Looks like there were no changes or additions to that. However, based on Commissioner Boda's comment, rightfully so, we probably need to include in the motion for approval the rationale for why we're not retaining the first inch.
So this is Commissioner Boda. Jamie, we have in the past read these conditions. Is that what would be the most appropriate here, or can we adopt, for example, oops, I'm trying to scroll on your screen. Like the conditions for approval and then enumerate numbers 1 through 6, as well as the standard conditions, and then the general provision in per section 11.11 of the, can we do
Jamie
it that
Frederick
way?
and Wetland Agent. I think you can reference the staff report revised October 14th and just enumerate which conditions you're looking to apply to the approval, if that's what you're looking to do.
Okay, so this is Commissioner Boda. Are there, I'm looking at conditions 1 through 6. Are folks, if I were to make a motion, does anyone want to add anything to that or amend anything before that were to happen?
So,
no, we're okay.
looks like we're okay. This is the second time through. I think at this point in time, 1 through 6 are good.
Okay. All right. So then I will make a motion. This is Commissioner Boda. I will make a motion to approve inland wetland 21.08.02, 61 and 65 through 99 Bourbon Drive, with the conditions enumerated on the staff report dated October 14, 1 through 6, as well as our standard conditions and the provisions per section 11.11 of the Inland Wetland and Water Course Regulations of the Town of Brantford. I am making this motion aware that this particular application does not require or does not retain the first inch of runoff, and that the commission has considered the issues of the types of soil on site, and that this particular site is not amenable to holding those waters, and that the stormwater treatment units are the best option for this site.
Commissioner Greenwich, I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote on that motion. Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Commissioner Kraus, aye.
Commissioner Greenwich?
Commissioner Greenwich, aye.
Commissioner Panetonis?
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Did I get everybody? Okay. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck, Mr. Nuff.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Inland Wetland 210803, 5 and 13 Summit Place. We're demolishing an existing building and constructing a new 48-unit multifamily apartment building with associated parking. And, Jamie, any update on this?
In the wetland agent, I believe that the applicant is present this evening. I have prepared a staff report for this project as well. I just want to point out that the inland wetland regulations require retention of the first flush, which is then defined as the first inch. And the subject application has revised their site plans. They originally were proposing no on-site retention. They are now proposing retention of the first flush, or the stormwater quality volume, which is per the Connecticut state deep stormwater quality manual. And the applicant, I'm sure, can address any questions you may have on that. Would the applicant like me to screen share the site plans, or would you prefer to share them so that you can point?
I'd prefer, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And the primary revision that you would see in the plans that were submitted about a week or two ago is the inclusion of stormwater infiltration concrete galleries. That will first allow runoff from our two drainage systems to be directed to these galleries for the purposes of collection and retention and infiltration of the first flush, or the first inch of runoff from the site. Using the calculations defined or referenced in your regulations and shown in the DEP water quality manual, the first inch of runoff from the site is also referred to as the first flush. And that volume is entirely provided for within our galleries prior to the stormwater exiting the property, either to the on-site or the on-road drainage system in Summit Place, or the drainage system that is conveyed to the wetland to the east, or to the bottom of the sheet on the map you have in front of you. We also provided some documentation to the engineering department regarding the off the site to the bottom of the sheet. And I believe, based on Jamie's staff report, that it's his conclusion that the current state of that outfall does not warrant any additional measures at this time. Although I do believe Jamie included in her draft that outlet should be monitored over the next several years during and after construction to see if the condition remains, which, if so considered by the commission, we take no exception to. So that is really the summary of the revisions since the last meeting. and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Greenwald, have you seen a copy of the proposed conditions for approval that have been suggested by staff?
Yes, sir, I have.
Any problems with them?
None whatsoever.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I might add from an administrative standpoint, a condition that a copy of this colored presentation map be submitted for the file because I don't believe we have a copy of it.
Yeah, I can send that, Jamie. Just to clarify, it is identical to the grading and utility plan that you have on your records. It just has color. So we'd be happy to email it to you.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Boda. I would just ask Mr. McAvoy to revisit with the commission the distinction between the first flush. I'm looking here in the staff report between the first flush and the first inch, just for the understanding of the full commission.
Sure. So the first flush is sort of a term of art in the Connecticut DEP Water Quality Manual. And what it essentially implies is that with 1 inch of runoff, you collect over the vast majority of pollutants that may exist in a parking lot, driveway, paved surfaces, things of that nature, road salt, sediments, oil that might be in the parking lot. So that's sort of the benchmark, and the reason why your regulations have it is that after 1 inch, you're really dealing with more or less clean water. The first inch is really where the good stuff, the real nasty stuff from the parking lot and buildings comes off the surface. So when DEP, and I'm going to, this is right from the DEP Water Quality Manual, the water quality volume is a calculation that's based off 1 inch of rainfall and has different coefficients and factors given the percentage of impervious surfaces on the property. So we followed this exact formula that's in the Water Quality Manual to determine what the first flush is. So the first flush is identical to the water quality volume, which is a calculation that is based on 1 inch of rainfall on the site. So in my opinion, they're really one and the same.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Boda. Thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Greenwald? I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
I'm sorry, Dick, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion. If Commissioner Greenwald.
Before you do that, Dick, can you post the conditions, Jamie, on the screen?
Sure, 1 minute. And then I'm going to have to take a quick break and plug in my laptop because my battery's about to die and the whole meeting will end. Sorry about that, folks.
Go do it now.
For Mr. McAvoy, that would be terrible. Be like,
I don't need that.
we're about to click. Good night.
Waited through the other ones. Oh no.
Jamie, can you, this is Commissioner Baskin, can you increase the size of that type font?
Momentarily.
It needs to plug in first. Give her a second. All right.
Better, thank you.
Oh, and these are not the conditions. Let me know when you're ready to scroll.
Are we all set? Commissioner Greenwald, I'd like to make a motion on inland wetlands number 21.08.03 for 5 and 13 Summit Place. For the application a motion to approve the application with the conditions that are set forth in the memo that we have on the screen, and I have a hard copy in front of me. Items, special items 1 through 6, standard conditions, and general provisions per section 11.11. The applicant has introduced the holding of the 1 inch of rain, which we had talked about at the last meeting, and based upon that, I think their application is now complete.
Commissioner Basserman, I guess question on number 2.
We have a second and then discussion.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Boda, I'll second.
Okay, question on 2, is there a time frame for which we want those reports? Is there a period of which that's something that we want, and after that period it's no longer required?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yeah, number 2 is kind of a general condition of approval that the commission has applied in the past, and usually it's from the start of construction until the site is stabilized, which
What's the first line? This is Commissioner Boda. It says upon clearing the site and until it's stabilized.
Yeah, number 2 and 3, I wasn't really so sure about, but I figured it was better to throw them in there for you to consider and take out than to have to try and figure out language on the fly.
Does any other commissioner have a question or an amendment to the motion that's on the table? Let's do a roll call vote then. Commissioner Granalsh?
Commissioner Granalsh, aye.
Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Commissioner Kraus, aye.
Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Papatonis?
Commissioner Papatonis, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye.
This is Commissioner Boda. I just to Mr. McAvoy very quickly. I know that there was a bunch of issues that we asked you to tackle throughout this process, and I appreciate your thoroughness in getting it done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
There's Commissioner Basserman, especially that manhole. That you guys went almost above and beyond. Thank you.
I'm a little proud of myself. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, Inland Wetland 210901, 56 Stony Creek Road, installation of a fence around the wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I don't believe we have anyone here present for the application this evening. I was informed, so the subject property is currently the Nest, which is a school type use, daycare type use. And it's my understanding that a state agency is requiring that certain parts of the yard be fenced off so that it's not a hazard for the children. The applicant does not have all the details yet. However, since there are other agencies involved, I thought it might be appropriate for them to get the application submitted, get this on the commission's radar, so that hopefully when the time came, an application could be reviewed somewhat quickly. So just to show you real quick, they do have some temporary fencing up right now, which is the green fencing you can see in the picture that I believe I am sharing. And and they're looking for a more permanent solution, and they're looking at different options available to them. So I think they're hoping to have something submitted for the November 4th meeting. And I was going to go out there hopefully before that meeting to review current site conditions, because there have been many different applications on this project, on the site over the last couple of years, to try and make sure everything is getting wrapped up and addressed. I know they're also looking to do some wetland area plantings. So we'll have to wait and see what they submit. But does anyone from the commission have any particular concerns that I should maybe pass on to the applicant?
Not at this time.
I don't know if all the commissioners are familiar with the site, but there's a large wetland area that is maintained as lawn, which is used for the playground areas, which I think is driving the need for this application.
Let's review it in November and move on here.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Basserman, we're now into the enforcement section. Jamie, the floor is yours.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. First item is notice of violation, Island View Village condominium. Drainage maintenance required. Initial correspondence was sent on September 1st. And the main topic of discussion, I think this time, is the time frame for submission of an application. The property owner has been looking into the situation. I did meet with them after the September meeting out on site to review the condition, and they have a concept plan to update the commission, and that is my understanding they're hoping to submit for the November 4th meeting. So with that, if somebody from the association wants to, looks like maybe Pete Parent.
It's good evening, Pete Parent, professional engineer with CHA for the applicant. I'm going to share my screen here. So this is the conceptual plan that we've put together to repair the damage to the outfall. As you can kind of see here from the topography that was picked up by the LiDAR, the existing drainage system ends here in a relatively deep erosion hole that has kind of caused some of that system to fail, which I believe you discussed at your last month's meeting. So what we're proposing is to bring the system down more to the toe of the slope where everything's a little bit more gentle, provide a large scour hole with grouted riprap to provide a stable exit for this system, and then also provide a section of flatter pipes here. These two pipes would be at 1%, and also provide a sharp angle to further reduce velocities coming out of this system. And then come up the hill with a traditional set of drop manholes to keep velocities in check, and then replace the existing round catch basin that does not have a curb inlet with a standard DOT double wide curb inlet, so we can prevent any of the surface runoff that currently kind of collects in here in a large rainfall and then overtops and is causing some erosion issues further down on this slope. We chose the alignment here because we can construct this new system up to this point without disturbing the existing system. And then it would just be a quick swap over. They would replace that one basin, put this new pipe in, and then this system could be in use. And then they could come back and do all the removal of the old system and renovation, repairs of the slope and that sort of thing after this system was stable and operating. Our wetland scientists and survey crew have been out on site preparing a base map now. And as Jamie indicated, our intent is to have a complete set of design plans for your review at your November meeting. But if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns about what we're proposing here, we'd be happy to answer any questions and take any feedback so that our final design kind of addresses any concerns you may have.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think another good thing to address would be whether there's any anticipated mitigation of sediment on site or such from the erosion that has occurred. And I'm not sure if that's something that is part of what you're looking to do.
So certainly there's a considerable amount of sediment downstream of this area. We're not currently proposing to remove any of that, as it kind of seems like we would be creating more disturbance in the upland area than we'd be, doing any benefit. But certainly if that's something the commission wants to see, we can include it. But we're not proposing any of that at this time.
Commissioner Basserman, when we receive the application, this may warrant the site walk, and we'll see what the condition is on the existing erosion, and maybe at that point in time can make a determination whether mitigation is required or not.
Fair enough.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I just want to point out it is a very aggressive slope, and it is a challenging walk. So if you do plan on walking it, you should be prepared for that. I do have some photos.
Time for a drone.
I do have some photos from when I was out there. I can share them now, or they're in the Dropbox, and commissioners can look at them in their spare time before the next meeting.
I'd appreciate the latter. Okay. I guess stay tuned for November. Let's see, what do you have? 99 Todd's Hill Road next.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. 99 Todd's Hill Road, notice of violation, erosion control repairs, and site cleanup from Tropical Storm Ida. A little bit challenging getting the response I was looking for. However, I think the site has made positive progress. There was a bit of a hiccup when some of the sites were being seeded, some erosion controls were removed and not reinstalled upon the grading connection of the lots. There did not appear to be any significant impact relative to wetlands and watercourses, but material did get out into the street, which was immediately being cleaned up the next morning when I went out there to look at it, and additional erosion controls were being installed. The lots in question that have been problematic are hydro-seeded, and it's my understanding that the touch-up of some of the areas that needed to be reseeded occurred today. I did not have a chance to go out and confirm that happened, but a decent amount of the area of concern has been vegetated. And the main concern now is some of the anti-tracking pads and keeping those refreshed, but I also am of the understanding that was refreshed today. So I will keep inspecting and reviewing. I'm not sure that there's any action the commission needs to necessarily be involved in at this time relative to this site. These are some pictures from the last time that we were out there, and you can see a decent amount of this corner is starting to vegetate. And this is some old material that is still in the street.
Amy, this is Commissioner Boda. If you're thinking you're sharing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. All right, 1 minute. Screen share, photos. All right. So this is one entrance where there is no anti-tracking pad. You can see that it's been cleaned up. This is one of the places where an anti-tracking pad is supposedly supposed to be installed today. Here's a base layer for paving, which somebody destroyed, not utilizing the entrance, which it's my understanding this has also been addressed because this lot has been hydro-seeded and this is going to be paved in the near future. Minor tracking out of another entrance. And then this is the area that I was explaining was vegetated that you guys could all not see. It's not completely vegetated, as you can see, but my understanding is that these areas were touched up today. And we have had really good conditions where hydro seed has been taking pretty well lately. And again, so back when I issued the initial notice of violation, this was all open with no vegetation. So this vegetation is really going to help with the issues that were occurring.
Great.
Anyone have any questions or further concerns? All right. The next one is notice of violation 122.5C Chestnut Street, removal of trees and deposition of material. I updated the commission as to this at the last meeting. However, I had just sent the letter to the property owner and they had not had a chance to receive it to attend the meeting. There were some trees that were removed. The owner was not aware that they needed a permit to do so. The concern was safety for the house and those inhabiting the house. So I did go out there after our meeting and met with the property owner. And at that time, all of the wood that had fallen into the watercourse had been removed. The wood that there were sections of the trees that had rolled into the watercourse. And at the time of the meeting, we weren't sure why they were there. And we had a heavy rain event, which had washed all of that down. And the owner was already removing those by the time that this was brought to the commission's attention. They've fully been removed at this point. And I think the main question at this point is whether or not the commission is looking for replanting. The site does seem to be pretty stable. I'm not concerned about erosion. However, it certainly is more open than it was. I think another thing to consider is that I think some of the trees that were removed from the state right of way on Route 1, and they're not actually on the subject property. I think we have the property owner on the call if the commission has any questions, and I can also pull up some pictures of what the conditions look like.
This is Commissioner Bassler. Were the removal of the trees associated with any of the storms that we had?
I will let the property owner respond to that question.
Hi, good evening. This is Chikim. We purchased that property this spring, like around May, as a rental property. I think this is our first time on a rental property, so we're totally new to this business. Like about less than 2 months after we purchased the property, our neighbor's tree came down, crashed our tenant's car, which parked outside a garage. That was a big mess. So while our neighbor hired a tree service company come to have that tree removed, we asked them to survey our property as well, because there are lots of very substantial size tree very close to our house. Because that house is a very tiny property, a very small size property. So the tree was very close to the house. And the tree company service, they told us they found a few trees, like very old ones. It's already hollow and it's in danger of the property. So they told us we should have them removed right away, especially the summer's coming, the storm is coming. And after hear that, we had second tree service company come over to survey the property as well. And they told us the same thing. There are several trees, very large, old, and should be removed right away. And none of them told us this because this is so close to the road, and we should submit the application to the town to get approval. This is totally honest mistake because we never done this before. And both professional company they didn't remind us of this either. And they just keep on telling us this is very, endanger the property, endanger the residents inside the house. On top of their car just crashed. So we just had them remove the tree cut down the trees. So just for peace of mind. And I think a few weeks after that, the major rainstorm came in and flushed the tree, some of the rock into the water. And we did realize that, and we removed them right away. And that's the story. Is there any question? We're more than happy to answer. Just very sorry about that.
Jamie, orient me with the tree removal in the wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I have some photos queued up. Let me just see if, I have a GIS map as well. I'll start with that. All right. Am I screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay. So the subject property is 125C Chestnut Street. This is Route 1 here. This is the Kia dealership property. And you can see that there's a water course / drainage ditch along Route 1 that is on the state right-of-way property. So the tree removal was along the bank of the water course along this property here. And I will jump over to some photos that the applicant sent regarding the current condition of the site. So you can see all of the chunks of wood that we were discussing had rolled into the water course are stacked along the rear fence in the back of the house. And then there's a kind of steep drop off down to the water course / drainage ditch area, which does have a decent amount of undergrowth continuing to stabilize the bank. And then the bank drops off and there's a little bit of a shelf, if you will, adjacent to the main channel of the water course that retains water. And this shelf area, I believe, is state property. I have an as-built of the subject property and measured off of the foundation, and it looked like basically right where the slope ends is probably the end of their property. So if they were to do plantings on this lower area, they would also need to get a permit from the state DOT.
Yeah, at this time we are, unless it's required, we're not going to do any replanting to make matters simple.
This Commissioner
yeah,
Bassett,
as you
again,
can see, this is still small trees there.
Yeah. There are still some small trees stay on the bank.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, how important is because they talked about the big, large trees, how important is it the canopy for controlling invasives in the water course here?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So that is a good question, especially since there is knotweed across the bank over here. And I believe that there's some on this side further down. Not having anything in here is going to allow for that knotweed to spread if it's not treated. It primarily spreads through the rhizomes, so it's not going to fill in completely. It's going to creep from where it currently is. So it kind of depends on, there is some stuff in here, and it depends on how quickly that establishes as to how much it might help block the knotweed from taking over.
This is Commissioner Kraus. Can I ask a question? Was the tree that was taken down, I didn't quite get the whole story. Was the tree that was taken down, had it already fallen or was it intact?
According to the tree service company, they said the tree is hollow inside. It can come down at any time. They're just waiting for the next storm to come down.
Okay, but it was still standing. It wasn't on the...
It was
still standing, but indeed, I showed, Jamie saw it. It's hollowed.
The tree came down, the tree trunk is a hollow tree trunk. It was standing.
Okay.
But
and was the tree on their property or on the state's property?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. It's kind of hard to determine for sure, and I'm not sure exactly how many trees were removed. The stumps are still in place, but there is enough undergrowth that I'm not sure that I saw them all. About how many trees did you have removed? Do you know?
On the back, 3 trees.
I think it's 3 or 4.
No, another tree is on the side of the yard. It's not behind. It's not on this side. There's another tree, so we removed 4 total. 3 on this board on this side.
Okay.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, if plantings were to be installed, what would the recommendation be?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I mean, you could require 3 trees to replace. I mean, they're obviously not going to be mature trees, but I think that some level of compromise with the applicant or property owner would be appropriate. It seems pretty clear that they were not aware that what they were doing was a violation and they were doing it out of a concern for safety.
Commissioner Basserman again, I guess if trees are the only solution, that's one thing, but are there other solutions here to try to control the invasives, other than putting in immature trees?
Jamie,
this is Commissioner Buda. I think that the invasives are one issue. I think the other issue is the change in light and temperature. I think if there were trees, and if we look just further upstream, that we can see with the canopy that's there, that stream or the state drainage is getting coverage, and we've seen it further down by the Kia.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a couple of issues. One is the light and temperature impacts. 2, the invasive impacts, because it's not just the knotweed that's going to come in. The garlic mustard is going to come in, and all sorts of stuff are going to come in. And wild trees, planting to or homeowner while dealing with planting trees in the state might seem complicated. I assure you that trying to deal with an invasive management plan for the next 5 plus years is going to be more complicated. You will be fighting nonstop with with invasives. So, and then third, I think that while it, maybe it's stable right now, I do wonder about the difference between some of this herbaceous material versus the trees, and thinking about erosion control and really getting any of the sediments that are in the water to settle out. So I would really, and if this was any other site and this happened, our past practice is always to return the functions that were being provided for. This was not an application that we received. It was an action taken, and understandable, and it's possible that we might have said that one tree, and we probably wouldn't have said it could come all the way down. We probably would have said, cut it, 5 feet above the ground or whatever, so that it would maintain some of its function. So in situations like this, what we look to is what were the existing functions that were happening, and look for the homeowner to provide a plan to restore those functions. And so right now, what I see as those functions are invasive protection as a buffer to invasives, and then as well as particularly shading, so that we could really protect that stream from the temperature fluctuation